Today, I want to share a picture that weighs heavy on the heart, a picture of a place that should have been a cradle of peace, but instead it trembles under shadows. The title of my speech is This Village in Fear. When I close my eyes, I can see the village clearly. A place where children once played freely under the sun, where women drew water from the well with laughter, and where the evenings echoed with prayers and stories around the fire. But now silence sits on every doorstep. The smiles have disappeared, the laughter has faded, and every sound of the wind feels like a warning. The trees still stand, the fields still stretch wide, but the spirit of the people has been caged by fear. You can feel it in their eyes, the way they avoid the horizon, the way they hush their voices as if even words are unsafe. Mothers hold their children tighter at night, not because of dreams, but because of nightmares that walk while awake. Doors that once stayed open in welcome are now bolted with trembling hands. The simple sound of footsteps on the road makes hearts pound, and even the chirping of birds feels like it carries a hidden message. This fear is not just in the streets. It has seeped into the air, into the water, into the very soil of the village. The fields that once promised food now whisper uncertainty. The markets that should have been filled with colors are now places of hurried glances and heavy silences. Young people who should be dreaming of a brighter future instead wonder if there will be a tomorrow at all. And yet, within this fear, there is also a strange kind of strength. The people of the village are not weak, though they are shaken. They hold on to one another, they whisper prayers, they share even the smallest grains of hope like treasures. The fear has not stolen their humanity, but it has tested it beyond measure. This village in fear teaches us something powerful, that safety is not just about walls or weapons. It is about trust, about dignity, about the right to live without shadows following you. It teaches us how precious freedom is and how fragile it becomes when darkness creeps into the corners of life. So when we speak of peace, let us not think of it as distant or abstract. Let us think of it as the answer to the trembling heart of this village and countless villages like it. Let us remember that behind the word fear are faces, families, and futures waiting to breathe freely again. The everyday life of the people in this village has changed in ways that words can hardly capture. For where there was once the ordinary rhythm of living, now there is only uncertainty. The mothers who once greeted the morning with gentle smiles and hopes for their children now begin the day with heavy hearts, unsure of what might happen before nightfall. They hold their little ones close, keeping them indoors instead of letting them run barefoot through the dusty paths, because even the open road feels unsafe. The children who once laughed freely, chasing each other under the bright sun, now sit in quiet corners, their games reduced to whispers, their eyes searching their mothers' faces for comfort that cannot always be given. The sound of laughter that once echoed across the fields has been replaced by the sound of silence, broken only by the nervous flutter of voices that never rise too loud. Families no longer share meals with the same joy they once did, for even as food is served, there is the heavy presence of fear at the table, taking a seat beside every member of the household. When night falls, the fear becomes heavier, pressing against every wall and every closed door. Mothers tuck their children into bed but do not sleep themselves, listening for footsteps outside, listening for voices in the distance, their ears trained to catch even the smallest sound that might carry danger. The lamps that once glowed warmly in homes are dimmed early, not to welcome sleep, but to hide the house in shadows, as though invisibility might bring protection. The fathers and elders of the family who once shared stories under the stars now sit in silence, staring into the darkness as if searching for answers that refuse to come. Even the animals of the village seem restless, the dogs barking into the night, the roosters crowing at odd hours, all of them sensing the unrest that hangs heavy in the air. The streets tell another story of this fear. Where children once ran with bare feet and villagers gathered to exchange words and laughter, now the paths are deserted. Only a few daring steps can be heard, often hurried and nervous, and conversations, if they happen at all, are conducted in hushed tones. Even greetings that once carried warmth are now brief, as though every word spoken out loud is dangerous. The well in the center of the village, which used to be a place of gathering where women drew water and shared stories, now stands in loneliness. Women no longer linger with their pots balanced on their heads. They come and go quickly, glancing around as if the air itself cannot be trusted. The marketplace, too, has changed. The colors of fruits and vegetables once arranged proudly by sellers seem dull now because the joy of trade has vanished. People buy only what they must, avoiding eye contact, their movements quick, their baskets lighter than before, their steps directed back home as soon as possible. In the fields, the change is just as visible. Farmers who once sang songs as they worked under the sky now move silently, their eyes scanning the horizon more often than their crops. The earth, which once promised harvest and security, now feels fragile, uncertain, as if even nature has been touched by the fear that grips the village. The air carries not just the smell of soil and crops, but also the unspoken worry of whether the next season will come in peace or in sorrow. For the young people of the village, this fear weighs differently. They look at the same trees and same roads, but instead of dreams of school, friendship, and a future, they carry the burden of unanswered questions. They wonder if tomorrow will give them a chance to grow, or if tomorrow will simply bring more shadows. Their youth, which should have been filled with exploration and hope, is instead wrapped in caution and silence. Inside the homes, fear lives as an unseen guest. The walls that should have been filled with joy are now heavy with sighs. Conversations around meals are cut short, and often they are replaced by the kind of silence that speaks louder than words. Children notice when their mothers' voices tremble, even if they try to hide it. They notice when their fathers return home earlier than usual, not because the work is finished, but because the streets are not safe after sunset. Families try to comfort each other, but their eyes betray the truth that none of them can ignore: the simple acts of daily life. Cooking, cleaning, fetching water, caring for animals are no longer simple. Each step, each task carries a shadow of hesitation, as if fear has stretched its hand into every corner of the ordinary. Even the seasons feel different in a village that lives under fear. The rains do not bring joy. Instead, they bring the worry of darkness and the unease of thunder. The winds do not refresh. They make the trees whisper in ways that sound like warnings. The bright sun does not promise happiness. It only exposes how empty the streets and fields have become. Every part of the natural world that once supported life now mirrors the fear that has taken root in the hearts of the people. And yet, despite this, the villagers try to go on, to cling to the pieces of their lives, to carry forward what little strength they have left, because in fear or in peace, life insists on moving forward. Fear in this village is not something that remains outside the homes or only in the minds of a few. It has spread like smoke into every corner of daily existence, clinging to walls, to streets, to the very air the people breathe. It begins with the silence on the roads, where every footstep echoes too loudly and every passing shadow feels like a sign of danger. The roads that once carried songs, carts, and chatter now hold only hurried steps and glances over the shoulder. Even in broad daylight, people walk as if they are trespassing on their own land, their eyes darting, their breaths shallow, their bodies tense with invisible weight. The conversations that used to flow so freely, filled with jokes, stories, and plans for the future, are now reduced to whispers that break off quickly, as though words themselves are being watched. Inside the homes, the fear becomes an uninvited member of every family. The sound of a knock on the door makes everyone freeze, eyes turning to one another in silent dread before anyone dares to answer. The smallest creak of the wooden gate, the rustle of leaves at night, or the distant bark of a dog is enough to wake people from restless sleep. Women who once cooked with songs on their lips now stir pots in silence, their ears alert to every sound outside. Children who once asked endless questions now sit quietly, sensing the heaviness in the air, learning too young that it is safer to keep their voices low. Even laughter feels dangerous, as if joy itself might draw unwanted attention. In the fields, the farmers continue to work because survival depends on it. Yet the rhythm of their lives has been broken. Where there was once singing, now there is quiet labor, interrupted by frequent looks to the edges of the land, scanning for something unseen but deeply feared. The rustling of the crops in the wind no longer feels like music, but like whispers of caution. Even the soil beneath their feet seems uncertain, as if it too carries the tension that runs through the village. The women fetching water from the well do not linger for conversation anymore. The well that was once the heart of gossip, laughter, and shared burdens is now approached with quick steps, filled pots, and swift departures. Each woman looks around before she bends to draw water, and her hands tremble not from the weight of the pot, but from the thought of staying too long. The marketplace, usually the most vibrant and crowded place in any village, has lost its life. Traders arrange their goods with little hope of selling much, their eyes moving more often to the road than to the baskets in front of them. Buyers arrive quietly, pick what they need, and leave as quickly as possible, avoiding unnecessary talk. Bargaining, which once filled the market with energy, has disappeared because no one wants to linger. The colors of fresh vegetables, fruits, and cloth are dulled not by dust, but by the absence of joy that once surrounded them. Even the sound of coins exchanging hands feels sharp, unnatural, and too loud in the silence that fills the space. The children of the village, who should be the freest of all, are perhaps the ones most affected. Their games no longer echo through the alleys, their laughter no longer fills the evenings. They play indoors, often quietly, watching their parents' faces for signs of safety. When they do go outside, their movements are cautious, their voice is soft, as if they have learned from the adults around them that the world is not safe. The school that should have been a place of light and dreams feels more like a place of shadows, where the teachers speak in tones that are too serious, and the students sit with more worry than wonder. The joy of learning is clouded by the same fear that has wrapped itself around every heart. The elders of the village, who once sat together under the trees to share wisdom and memories, now sit in silence, their gatherings reduced in number and their conversations cautious. They exchange worried glances more often than words, their stories left untold because even stories feel unsafe. The trees that once gave shade to their laughter now stand as silent witnesses to the weight of fear pressing down on their people. Even prayers which once rang out strong and clear are now whispered more softly, as if the villagers believe even their faith must be hidden. At night the fear takes its strongest hold. The houses lock early, their lamps turned down low, their windows shut tightly. Families huddle together, each sound outside interpreted as a possible sign of danger. The dogs bark at the darkness, the owls cry from the trees, and every noise makes hearts race. Sleep does not come easily, and when it does, it is light, fragile, always ready to break at the slightest disturbance. The night that should have been a time of rest has instead become the longest stretch of anxiety, where dreams are not of hope but of fear itself. This shadow of fear has entered not only the lives but also the souls of the villagers. It has changed the way they walk, the way they speak, the way they think, until even the simplest acts, fetching water, planting seeds, greeting a neighbor, are done with caution and unease. Fear has turned the familiar into something strange, the safe into something dangerous, the ordinary into something heavy. It has woven itself into every thread of life, leaving the people with no moment of peace, no corner untouched, no breath that is free from its presence. Within the heart of this fearful village, where shadows press heavily on every life, there exists something that refuses to be destroyed, a hidden strength that rises quietly in the people. Though their voices are lowered, though their steps are careful, their spirits are not fully broken. They hold onto one another, clinging to family, neighbors, and community in a way that speaks of resilience. For even in fear, they understand that unity is the only shield they have. When one family is in need, another steps forward, sharing whatever little they can, whether it is food, a blanket, or just a word of comfort whispered in the stillness of night. These acts may appear small, but within them lives the courage to keep going. Fear has taken much from them, but it has not been able to take away the bonds they share with each other. Prayers have become their greatest strength. Where laughter once filled the air, now the murmur of prayers floats softly across the village. Men and women close their eyes and lift their hands, not with loud voices, but with steady faith, believing that their whispered words can reach beyond the darkness that surrounds them. In the silence of their homes, mothers pray over their children, hoping to guard them with something stronger than walls and locks. Elders pray for the village itself, that peace will return and that the young will not grow up knowing only fear. Even children, too young to understand the weight of all that surrounds them, join their families in these quiet supplications, their innocent voices adding strength to the chorus of hope. The villagers have learned to share their burdens in subtle ways. When fear closes in too tightly, neighbors gather in small groups, not to talk loudly or to plan openly, but simply to sit near each other. The comfort of knowing they are not alone gives them strength. They exchange glances that carry unspoken words of encouragement, and sometimes a single nod from an elder or a single smile from a mother is enough to remind others that hope has not completely died. In these small gestures, they keep alive the thread of community that fear constantly tries to cut. There is a quiet bravery in how they continue their daily tasks despite the weight pressing down on them. The farmers still go to their fields, though they look over their shoulders with every step. Women still fetch water, though their hands tremble at the thought of staying too long at the well. Children still walk to school, though their eyes are wide with worry and their voices are hushed. Each act of continuing with life is a silent form of resistance, a way of saying that fear may shape their days, but it cannot stop them completely. Every seed planted, every pot filled, every lesson learned is an act of courage. The strength of the villagers is not only in what they do, but in what they refuse to let go of. They refuse to abandon kindness. Even when their cupboards are nearly empty, they will share a piece of bread with someone who has none. Even when their own hearts are heavy, they will offer a word of reassurance to someone more frightened. They refuse to abandon dignity, holding their heads high even when shadows loom close. They may speak softly, but they carry within them a quiet pride, a reminder to themselves and to others that they are still human beings with worth, with hope, with the right to live without fear. Children too show a form of hidden strength. Though their games are quieter, though their laughter is rare, they still find ways to play, to imagine, to create small sparks of joy in the darkness. A stone becomes a toy, a chalk line on the ground becomes a playground, and for a moment their spirits rise above the silence that grips their elders. In their innocence lies a reminder that fear has not completely claimed the future, that something bright still flickers in the hearts of the youngest among them. The elders, though weary, also carry strength in their memories. They remind the younger ones that the village once knew joy, that it once knew peace, and that what was lost can one day return. Their voices, though quieter now, carry the weight of experience, offering a kind of courage that comes not from ignoring fear, but from having lived through it before. Their presence is like an anchor for the village, holding the people together when everything else feels uncertain. This strength is not loud or obvious. It does not come with shouts or defiance, but it is there, woven into the fabric of everyday life. It is the mother's hand holding her child's tightly at night, the farmer's back bent over the soil despite the heaviness in his heart, the neighbor sharing a bowl of rice with someone who has none, the soft prayers rising from every home. Fear has spread its shadow over the village, but hidden beneath that shadow is a light that has not gone out, a quiet resilience that keeps the people moving forward, step by step, day by day, holding on to hope even when it feels far away. This village in fear carries a lesson that reaches beyond its borders, a reminder of what true peace really means. Peace is not only the absence of noise or the stillness of streets. It is the presence of dignity, of trust, of freedom from the shadows that make people lower their voices and lock their doors too early. In the silence of this place, in the heavy air that presses on every heart, we see how fragile peace truly is, how easily it can be taken for granted until it is gone. The villagers who live each day in fear teach us that safety is not simply about walls, weapons, or guards, but about being able to live freely, to laugh without caution, to gather without whispers, to dream without hesitation. Every look in their eyes carries the weight of this truth. A mother cradling her child close does not only wish for food or clothing, she wishes for the simple freedom to let her child play outside without trembling at every sound. A farmer who walks the length of his field does not only hope for rain and harvest, he hopes for the chance to work without scanning the horizon in dread. A young girl who carries her books to school does not only dream of learning, she dreams of a life where knowledge can flourish without being overshadowed by fear. These unspoken desires show us that true peace is not something grand or unreachable. It is woven into the smallest details of everyday life. The lesson of this village is that trust is as important as bread, that dignity is as precious as water, and that freedom is as necessary as air. Without trust, neighbors cannot share their burdens. Without dignity, people cannot lift their heads high. Without freedom, even the brightest day feels dark. The villagers know this not because they have read it in books or heard it in speeches, but because they live it every day. Their silences, their cautious steps, their whispered prayers all speak of the price of losing peace and the hunger for its return. This lesson is not only for them, it is for everyone who believes peace is permanent. The quiet fear in their lives shows us that peace is fragile, that it must be protected and valued, that it is not guaranteed simply because we expect it to last. It shows us that when trust between people is broken, when fear enters homes and streets, even the most ordinary acts become difficult. Lighting a lamp, greeting a neighbor, walking to school, gathering in the market. These should be simple joys, but under fear, they turn into acts of risk. The people of the village remind us of how valuable these small freedoms are because they live without them. The story of this village also shows that peace is not only about silence, but about safety. A silent street can be filled with fear, but a safe street is filled with life, voices, laughter, footsteps. True peace is not the kind that forces people into their homes. It is the kind that allows them to open their doors wide without worry. The stillness in this village is not peace. It is the shadow of fear pretending to be calm. In that difference lies the heart of the lesson they offer to the world. That peace must be alive, it must breathe, it must allow life to flourish. The way the villagers cling to hope even in their fear adds another part to this lesson. Hope becomes their shield when trust is broken. It becomes their strength when dignity is threatened. Even as they whisper their prayers, even as they move carefully through their days, they do not give up the dream that peace can return. This teaches us that peace is not only about what is around us, but also about what lives inside us. It is not only built on laws and agreements, but on the determination of ordinary people who refuse to let fear become their permanent companion. Every child who draws in the dirt with a stick, every mother who sings a lullaby softly at night, every elder who shares a quiet story of better days is reminding us that peace is not abstract, it is human. It is not a word written in treaties, but a feeling carried in the heart, a breath taken without fear, a step taken without hesitation. The village shows us that when peace is lost, life continues, but it is life in chains, life without its natural freedom. And when peace is present, even the smallest acts become beautiful. Fetching water, planting seeds, sharing a meal. This village in fear gives a mirror to the world, reflecting both the weight of living without peace and the value of living with it. It whispers a truth that must be heard, that peace is not only the absence of conflict, but the presence of dignity, trust, and freedom from shadows. It shows us that when fear is allowed to rule, life shrinks, and when peace is nurtured, life expands. It reminds us that behind every fearful silence are families, children, and futures longing for a world where they can breathe without worry, speak without whispering, and live without looking over their shoulders.